Okay, today we are going to create a tree, but it's going to be a warm and cool color tree. So we're going to make our tree, and our background is going to have our warm colors and our cool colors. And we are using Vincent van Gogh's painting called Starry Night as our inspiration for the background. So first thing first though, we're going to create our space for our warm colors and our cool colors. On your piece of paper, write your name and class code, turn it over so it's on the back. You're going to get a circle stencil and you're going to place this in the center of your page. As close to the center as you can is fine. We're going to trace around our stencil here, like so. So we have our circle. And inside of our circle, we're going to create a grid. A grid is where you have columns and rows, and we're going to use our ruler for that. And our ruler is going to be used as a straight edge. We're not actually going to use it for any measuring, just as a straight edge. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to place it about in the center of my traced circle, about so. And I'm going to draw a line on both sides of my ruler. So I have like a stripe going down the center. I'm going to slide my ruler over so that the edge of my ruler now lines up with one of the lines that I just drew. And I'm going to draw a line on the other side. So now I have two stripes. And I'm going to do that same process again. Like so. Then I'll move my ruler over and do the other side of my circle. Line up my ruler with one of the lines I just drew and draw a line on the other side. So now my circle is filled with vertical stripes. We call these columns. We're going to make the rows now. So I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to place it in the center of my circle, and I'm going to do the same process I did for my columns, only this time they're going to be horizontal lines. Notice that I'm staying inside of my circle. I'm not going on the outside, I'm only doing the inside. Line up my ruler with one of the lines I just drew. Trace across like so. Okay, come down here to do the bottom of my circle. And there we go. Now my circle looks a lot like a waffle. So we have our columns which go, or our rows which go side to side, and our columns which go vertically. So our circle is finished. At the bottom of our piece of paper, we're going to draw our ground at the bottom. And you can either draw it as a straight line, you can use your ruler for that, or if you want to kind of add some variety to it, you can kind of make it like a gentle wavy line. I'm gonna make mine something like that, kind of wavy across. Okay? Now we're gonna add some color. For this circle, I'm going to use warm colors. This is yellow, red, orange, and pink. I'm coloring mine in a varied pattern, so none of my colors touch. You can create your own color pattern inside the circle. For the background, we're gonna be using cool colors. These are green, blue, and purple. And I'm painting my background with wavy lines and broken lines and repeating lines, kind of similar to the way that Vincent van Gogh created the background for Starry Night. So it looked like the sky was moving and the wind was blowing. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is create our tree that's going to go over the top of our warm and cool color background. So you're going to get a black piece of paper. We're going to write our name on it, and then we're going to turn it over. Okay, we are using oil pastels for this. We're only going to be using neutral colors though. Neutral colors are colors that are not really on the color wheel, but they're usually found kind of in the middle of the color wheel. Neutral colors sometimes are formed when all of the colors collect together to create those colors. Sometimes it's the absence of color, lots of different things, okay? So my neutral colors I'm using today are white, black, gray, and then I'm also going to use a brown, okay? So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to draw my tree, and I'm gonna use my brown oil pastel. And when I draw my tree, I'm gonna start with using the letter Y, and then I'm also gonna use some V's to help me draw this. So first thing down here is I'm gonna draw, and it's gonna look like a Y that's got some thickness to it, almost like a bubble letter Y. So it's gonna come here, and then it's gonna come toward the center, and then it's gonna flare back out to the side. And I'm gonna do the same thing over here. Okay, so now my paper looks like it's got a letter Y on it. The next thing I'm gonna use are V's. And I'm gonna use long skinny V's, short wide V's, just a variety of V's. And these V's are going to represent the spaces in between my branch. We call these the negative space. So if I come over here to my branch on my tree and say I want it to be about this thick, so I'm gonna come down and I'm gonna create a long skinny V, like that. So there's my V. Look what I've created here. I've created one branch. And I've done that by using a long skinny V. Watch what happens when I use a short, wider V. If I come up here to the top, there's a much shorter, wider letter V. I've created another branch, but this one doesn't come all the way to the center of the tree. It's almost like there's gonna be another branch connecting to it. So let's connect another branch. I'm gonna come down, and maybe this one's gonna connect down. It's still a V, but it's kind of more of a wonky shaped V, and that's okay. So let's create another branch over here. And then maybe I'll do another V that comes down closer to the center of my tree, and then has a long skinny V, okay? And I'm getting close to my original branch down here, so I'm only gonna be able to do one, maybe two more. Maybe I'll make this one a little shorter like that, and then this one I'll come in here, okay? So now by doing that, I've created my tree. So if it's helpful to you, you can put an X inside those V's to kind of show you like which part is not a part of the tree. So if I do that, I'm gonna come down here. This is not a part of the tree, and neither is this, okay? Then any of those V shapes that I drew, inside them, I'm gonna put an X, because that's not part of my branch. This is part of my branch. So I drew this V, so inside it, I put an X. Same here. These X's are going to show the negative space around my branches. Basically, when I add my color to my tree, I'm not gonna color those parts, okay? For our colors, we're gonna use white, black, and gray. The black is going to represent the shadow, and the shadow part of our tree means that it's the farthest away from our light. So our shadow is actually gonna be here at like the edges of our branch, and the white is actually going to be in the center of our branch and our tree trunk. The gray is gonna fill in the space in between, okay? So let me show you what that's gonna look like. I'm going to use my 3 colors to color my tree. After I finished with black, gray, and white, I'm gonna take my finger and kind of blend the colors together. I'm not rubbing back and forth, but I'm pushing the colors together. Okay, now that I have my tree here, I'm gonna use my brown oil pastel again, and I'm gonna go back and add what's called a visual texture. I'm gonna make it look like tree bark without it actually being tree bark. And the way I'm gonna do that is just with like squiggle lines. Some of them are short, some of them are long, but I'm just kind of doing a variety of squiggle lines on my tree here, okay? I blended in my other colors so they kind of go together, but on my tree bark, I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna leave it sitting here on the surface of my tree. And the best part is even if your kind of texture lines are not exactly what you're hoping for, because of all of our blended colors, it's still gonna look like a pretty awesome tree, okay? So there's my tree, pretty happy with that. Now that I'm done with that, I'm gonna cut out my tree. When you cut out your tree, make sure to cut out the parts that you drew your X's on. All right, I have finished cutting out my tree. My background is done. My tree is done. So now I'm gonna glue on my tree. So on the back, we're gonna take our glue bottle. Remember, with our glue bottles here, we've got a brush inside. We're gonna brush off our extra glue, because just because it has a paintbrush doesn't mean we have to paint the whole thing. I'm gonna put glue at the end of all of my branches, because I want those to make sure they're stuck down. And then maybe kind of somewhere in the middle of my branches. And then a little bit down here at the end of my tree trunk, okay? All right, so I'm gonna take my tree and I'm gonna flip it over and I'm gonna line up my tree down here at the bottom of my paper, okay? Like so. And the way this should work is your black piece of paper should line up with your background piece of paper, because they were the exact same size piece of paper. So there should not be any trimming that you need to do. Okay, there is my warm and cool color tree.